What if I told you that the very thing you've been taught to hide, the one quality you've been told makes you weak, your vulnerability, could actually be your greatest weapon? Think about it. From the moment you were born into this culture, you've been fed the same mantra: be strong, be independent, never let them see you hurt. In America, strength is often measured by how well you can suppress emotion, by how stoic you can remain when life tears you apart. Men are told to be unbreakable. Women are told to smile through the pain. Leaders are expected to appear flawless, immune to doubt, and immune to fear. But what if this very definition of strength is a lie? What if the armor you've been wearing is not protecting you, but slowly imprisoning you? Imagine the CEO who appears untouchable in the boardroom, commanding respect with his polished suit and practiced voice, yet collapses into silence at home, unable to connect with the very people he loves. Imagine the decorated soldier, revered for his bravery, but privately haunted by nights he cannot sleep, by memories that break him from the inside out. Or the politician who projects unshakable confidence on stage, while secretly drowning in loneliness and despair. We applaud these masks. We admire their strength. But deep down, you know it, and I know it. That strength is often a facade, a shell, a performance. Behind closed doors, so many who appear powerful are empty, fragile, disconnected from their own humanity. And here lies the uncomfortable truth. What we call strength in this society is often nothing more than fear in disguise. The fear of being seen, the fear of being vulnerable. And as long as you cling to that illusion, you are not strong. You are controlled. So let me ask you again, what if the thing you've been hiding, the cracks you've been so desperate to cover, are not your weakness at all, but the very doorway to your true strength? If this opening has already stirred something inside you, don't just watch passively. Take a moment right now to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. That way you'll be the very first to know when I release the next video, because what we're about to dive into will not just give you knowledge, it may change the way you see yourself forever. Look around at the culture we live in today. We call it the hustle culture, the grind, the American dream. From a young age, you're told that your worth is measured by how busy you are, by how much you can accomplish, by how little sleep you need to survive. People wear exhaustion like a badge of honor. To admit weakness, to say, "I'm not okay," feels like failure. So you learn to keep moving. You fill your schedule with meetings, deadlines, and obligations. You chase goals that don't even belong to you, just to keep up with the illusion of success. And in this endless race, one rule dominates: never let anyone see you stumble. But here's the irony. Behind the glowing screens, behind the smiles plastered on Instagram, the reality is much darker. America is one of the wealthiest nations in the world, and yet depression, anxiety, and loneliness are epidemic. People are medicated not because their brains are broken, but because their souls are suffocating under the weight of pretending. Addiction to drugs, alcohol, pornography, and social media is not just about escape, it is about hiding. Hiding from the unbearable demand to always appear strong. You've seen it in your own circles. The coworker who always says, "I'm fine," but drinks himself to sleep at night. The friend who posts pictures of a perfect life, but texts you at 2 a.m. saying she feels empty. The family member who always plays the role of caretaker, but silently crumbles when no one is watching. This is not an exception. This is the norm. And the cost of this constant hiding is devastating. We are a society addicted to appearances, while starving for authenticity. But here's where something incredible happens. Every so often, in the middle of this polished facade, someone dares to break the script. They admit they don't have it all together. They confess their fear, their doubt, their pain. And instead of losing respect, they suddenly gain it. Because in those rare moments of honesty, something shifts. People see themselves reflected in that vulnerability. They feel less alone. And the bond created in that space is stronger than any illusion of perfection could ever be. History itself gives us powerful examples. Abraham Lincoln, one of the most revered leaders in American history, was not a man without wounds. He suffered from depression so deep that his closest friends feared for his life. And yet, it was this very vulnerability, his openness about the weight of suffering, that gave him such profound empathy, such ability to speak words that pierced the American soul during its darkest days. Or consider Winston Churchill. Known for his strength in guiding Britain through World War II, Churchill also battled with what he called his black dog, the shadow of depression that haunted him. But instead of destroying his leadership, it humanized it. His vulnerability did not make him weaker. It made him relatable. It made him a leader who understood despair and therefore could inspire hope. Do you see the pattern? Vulnerability, when embraced consciously, becomes not a liability but a bridge. It connects leader to people, friend to friend, soul to soul. Now imagine what this means for you. For years, maybe even decades, you've been running from your vulnerability, hiding it like a stain that must never be seen. But what if the truth is that those cracks are the very place where light enters? That the weight you've been carrying in silence is not your enemy, but your chance to finally be real with yourself and real with the people who matter most. Because here is the paradox. The more you try to appear invincible, the more fragile you become. But the moment you dare to admit your humanity, you discover a strength that no mask can provide. And in that moment, you stop being just another performer in this endless theater of strength, and you begin to live as a whole, authentic human being. When most people hear the name Machiavelli, one image comes to mind: the cold strategist, the manipulative mastermind, the ruthless author of The Prince. He is often painted as a prophet of cruelty, a man who advised leaders to lie, deceive, and crush their enemies without hesitation. And yet, this shallow interpretation misses something essential. Machiavelli was not teaching cruelty for cruelty's sake. He was revealing the reality of power. And within that reality lies a paradox. True strength is not always found in hardness, but in the strategic use of vulnerability. In The Prince, Machiavelli argued that a ruler should not cling blindly to ideals of goodness or morality when survival and leadership demanded adaptability. Power, he said, belongs not to the rigid, but to those who can bend, transform, and use every tool available, including their own perceived weaknesses. To him, strength was not about being untouchable. It was about knowing when to appear untouchable and when to reveal humanity, even fragility, in order to disarm and connect. Think of vulnerability not as an open wound, but as a calculated weapon. When revealed at the right moment, it lowers defenses. People stop seeing you as a distant figure to fear or resist, and start seeing you as someone they can trust. But like any weapon, it requires discipline. If you expose too much, too recklessly, you risk becoming prey. If you reveal it with intention, however, it can turn adversaries into allies. History is full of examples. Consider a military strategy. A city appears weak, leaving its gates open as if defenseless. The enemy, overconfident, marches inside only to be ambushed from within. What looked like weakness was, in fact, deliberate. A trap. Vulnerability, in this sense, is not about surrender, it is about control through illusion. Or take leadership. A politician who admits a personal mistake, who stands before the people not as a flawless idol, but as a human being who has failed and learned, can often gain more respect than one who pretends perfection. By owning weakness, they transform it into credibility. By acknowledging imperfection, they become relatable, approachable, and trustworthy. Machiavelli understood that humans are not inspired by gods who pretend to be above suffering. They are inspired by those who reveal enough humanity to mirror their own struggles, while still demonstrating the strength to lead through them. Vulnerability, then, becomes a political tool, not to manipulate in the cheap sense, but to govern effectively. And here's where philosophy deepens the picture. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychologist, once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, It will direct your life and you will call it fate. What you hide, what you repress, will eventually control you. Vulnerability is not simply about showing others who you are. It is about showing yourself. If you deny your pain, your fear, your need, those hidden forces will erupt in destructive ways, sabotaging your choices, poisoning your relationships, shaping your destiny without your consent. Nietzsche took this even further. For him, strength was born not in comfort, but in chaos. You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star, he wrote. To Nietzsche, confronting your fragility was not weakness, it was the crucible in which greatness was forged. Only those who dared to face their inner trembling could create something transcendent. So when we bring Jung and Nietzsche into dialogue with Machiavelli, the lesson becomes clear. Vulnerability is not just a personal trait, it is a strategic necessity. It is the bridge between the psyche and power, between chaos and leadership. Without it, you become brittle, a mask that eventually cracks. With it, you become whole, adaptable, and dangerous in the best possible sense. And yet, society has trained you to believe the opposite, that if you show pain, you will be rejected. That if you confess doubt, you will lose respect. That if you admit failure, you will be discarded. This is the illusion that keeps you small, controllable, and silent. But Machiavelli's true wisdom was this: the one who masters both masks, the mask of strength and the mask of vulnerability, masters the game of life itself. Now the question is, how do you apply this truth to your own existence? How do you wield vulnerability not as a curse, but as a conscious strategy to reclaim power over your life, your relationships, and your destiny? That is where we must go next. You've spent your entire life trying to hide your wounds. From the very beginning, you were told that to cry was shameful, that to show fear was weakness, that pain was something to be swallowed in silence. You grew up surrounded by voices that praised control, that demanded perfection, that taught you to wear strength like a mask, no matter how much you were breaking inside. And you believed them. You believed that if you could just hold it together, if you could just be strong enough, you would finally earn respect, finally be safe, finally belong. But now, pause for a moment. Look at the silent wars you fought with yourself. Think of the nights you lay awake, heart pounding, because the weight of everything you refused to say crushed you. Think of the mornings where you forced a smile into place, whispering, "I'm fine," while your chest burned with truths you couldn't voice. Consider how much of your life has been spent performing someone else's idea of strength. Ask yourself honestly, has it ever made you truly free? Here is the reality you've avoided. Real strength has nothing to do with denial. Real strength does not mean walking through fire without feeling the burn. It does not mean pretending you are unshakable. True strength is the ability to face pain and not turn away. It is the courage to stand in the storm, soaked and trembling, and still say, "This is me. I am here." Machiavelli, often painted as ruthless, understood something deeper. He knew that power belongs not to the rigid, but to the adaptable. And adaptability means using every tool at your disposal, including vulnerability. Carl Jung echoed this truth when he said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. What you hide, what you repress, will dominate you until you choose to confront it." Nietzsche went even further, declaring that greatness is born from chaos. One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. What both men were saying is this: the cracks in your armor are not flaws. They are openings through which transformation can occur. Think about your own life. The moments when you felt the most alive, the most human, were they moments of perfection? Or were they moments of raw honesty? The time you finally admitted to someone you trusted, "I can't do this alone." The time you cried openly, and instead of judgment, you found comfort. The time you confessed a fear, and instead of rejection, you were embraced. Those moments didn't make you weaker. They made you real. They made you free. And here lies the paradox you must finally understand. the thing you've been running from. Your vulnerability is not your enemy. It is your doorway to strength. When you stop hiding, you stop being controlled by the fear of exposure. When you stop pretending, no one can use your humanity against you. You reclaim the power that comes from being unashamedly yourself. Strength is not about never falling. It's about falling and choosing to rise again. It's about breaking and learning how to rebuild with even greater depth. It's about admitting fear and then stepping forward anyway. This is the kind of strength that terrifies those who live by appearances, because it cannot be manipulated. It cannot be bought. It cannot be destroyed. Imagine what would happen if you stopped hiding. If you let yourself be seen, not the polished version, not the curated image, but the raw truth of who you are. What if you stopped apologizing for being human? What if you stopped measuring your worth by how well you can suppress your own soul? The world would change. Your relationships would change. You would change. Because the truth is, you were never weak. You were never broken. You were never less than enough. You were simply unfinished, waiting for the courage to face the very parts of yourself you thought you needed to bury. This is your awakening. Not to the illusion of invincibility, but to the reality of wholeness. To the power of being fully human. Once you embrace this, you no longer live as a mask. You no longer walk through life as a performance. You live as yourself, vulnerable, real, and more powerful than you ever imagined. This is what Machiavelli, Jung, and Nietzsche were pointing to in different ways. That the strength you've been searching for is not found in denying your wounds, but in integrating them. That the power you crave is not in appearing untouchable, but in being unafraid to be seen. And that the only way to stop being a prisoner of fear is to walk directly into the very vulnerability you've been taught to hide. So here is the challenge and the invitation. Stop running. Stop hiding. Stop betraying yourself in the name of an illusion. Let your vulnerability speak. Let it connect you, transform you, awaken you. Because when you finally do, you will discover that the thing you once believed would break you is the very thing that makes you unbreakable. Up until now, we've shattered the illusion that strength comes only from appearing invincible. We've seen how society conditions us to hide our wounds, how leaders throughout history used their fragility as a source of connection, and how Machiavelli himself showed that adaptability, including the strategic use of vulnerability, is the essence of power. But the question remains, how can you apply this to your life? How do you stop letting vulnerability control you and start using it consciously as a tool for growth, connection, and influence? Let's dive into the practical path. 1. Stop running from pain. Start listening to it. The first step is to stop treating vulnerability as an enemy. Most people live their entire lives running from discomfort. They drown it with endless work, with screens, with alcohol, with distractions. But pain ignored doesn't disappear, it festers. Carl Jung warned us, what you resist not only persists but grows in size. Your anxiety, your fear of failure, your loneliness, these are not flaws to be silenced, but messages from the deepest part of yourself. Instead of suppressing them, start listening. Journal about what scares you. Name the emotions you've been hiding. Acknowledge the story you've been telling yourself about why you must always appear strong. This act alone begins to transform weakness into awareness. 2. Share strategically, not recklessly. Vulnerability doesn't mean spilling your soul to everyone you meet. That's not strength, that's exposure without boundaries. Instead, choose moments and people wisely. Start small. Share your struggles with one trusted friend, a mentor, or a partner. Notice how honesty builds connection. Then, when the time is right, allow vulnerability to play a role in your leadership, in your work, in your art. Remember Machiavelli's lesson. Vulnerability is most powerful when revealed deliberately. A leader who admits a personal challenge at the right time earns trust. An artist who channels their suffering into creation inspires others. A partner who speaks openly about fear deepens intimacy. 3. Redefine what strength means to you. American culture equates strength with dominance, with never bending, with always pushing through. But this rigid definition leaves people broken and isolated. True strength, as Nietzsche suggested, is forged in chaos, in the willingness to face what terrifies you. Redefine strength as the ability to remain present in discomfort. Strength is crying when you need to cry, but not being destroyed by it. Strength is admitting, I don't know, and still moving forward. Once you redefine strength, you stop measuring yourself against impossible standards and begin honoring your humanity. 4. Transform vulnerability into leadership whether you realize it or not. People around you are starving for authenticity. We live in a world full of curated images, motivational slogans, and hollow smiles. When someone dares to break that pattern, to say, I'm hurting too, it cuts through the noise like lightning. That's why leaders who embrace vulnerability don't lose influence, they multiply it. Think of Lincoln's melancholy, Churchill's black dog, or modern figures who speak openly about mental health. They don't inspire us because they are flawless. They inspire us because they remind us we're not alone. Use your vulnerability as a bridge, not a barrier. Share it consciously to lead with both courage and humanity. 5. Build resilience through integration. Here is the deepest truth. Vulnerability without resilience becomes fragility. But vulnerability integrated with resilience becomes unshakable power. Integration means facing the parts of yourself you've been running from, the shadow Jung spoke about. The anger you repress, the fear you deny, the sadness you bury. When you integrate them, they no longer control you. Instead, they become part of your wholeness. This is not about eliminating pain, but transforming your relationship to it. When you learn to stand in your vulnerability without collapsing, you stop being a puppet of circumstances. You gain the power to respond rather than react. 6. Practice the art of withdrawal. Machiavelli knew that sometimes strength lies not in fighting, but in retreat. Vulnerability becomes destructive when it is used against you by those who don't deserve access to your inner world. That's why boundaries are crucial. You don't owe your truth to everyone. Withhold it when necessary. Use silence as a weapon. As Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. By observing who reacts when you withhold your availability, you discover who truly values you and who only seeks to use you. 7. Embody, don't perform. Finally, the ultimate solution is to embody vulnerability as part of who you are, not as a performance. Too many mistakes vulnerability for another, mask using it to gain sympathy or manipulate emotions. That's not authenticity. That's strategy without soul. True strength in vulnerability comes when you embody it naturally, when you no longer fear being seen as incomplete. Because here is the paradox. The moment you stop pretending to be unbreakable, you become unbreakable. The moment you stop fearing exposure, you stop being controlled by it. And so the path forward is clear. Stop running, start listening, share wisely, redefine strength. Use vulnerability as a bridge to lead, not a shield to hide. Integrate the shadow, set boundaries, and embody the truth of who you are without apology. When you do this, you discover the deepest Machiavellian truth of all. Power does not come from domination alone. It comes from mastering both sides of the human condition, the mask of strength and the revelation of vulnerability. So now we arrive at the question that cannot be avoided. What will you do with this truth? You've seen how society taught you to bury your vulnerability, how culture equated strength with denial, and how that denial has kept you chained to illusions. You've seen how leaders, philosophers, and thinkers across time revealed a different path, a path where power is not found in pretending to be invincible, but in having the courage to be real. And you've felt it yourself. Somewhere deep down, you already know that the moments you've dared to be vulnerable were the moments you were most alive. So why keep running? Why keep hiding behind masks that exhaust you? Why keep betraying yourself just to fit an image of strength that was never real to begin with. The time has come to make a choice. You can continue to armor yourself, to perform, to drown under the weight of pretending. Or you can do something far more radical. You can stop. You can let yourself be seen. You can decide that vulnerability will no longer be your shame. It will be your strategy, your freedom, your strength. This does not mean exposing yourself recklessly. Machiavelli would never advise carelessness. It means revealing yourself consciously, with intention. It means showing humanity when it builds connection, admitting mistakes when it builds trust, and sharing pain when it builds empathy. It means choosing to wield your vulnerability like a sword rather than carrying it like a chain. And yes, it will feel terrifying at first. Vulnerability always does, but remember, fear is not a sign of weakness. Fear is a sign that you are stepping into something real. Nietzsche taught us that only through chaos can stars be born. And what is vulnerability if not chaos? The chaos of emotions, of uncertainty, of exposure. To embrace it is to embrace the possibility of transformation. So here is your call to action. Stop hiding. Find one person you trust and share a truth you've been afraid to say. Write down the pain you've been silencing and face it without judgment. Refuse to perform for the world today just once. Choose to be honest instead of perfect. These may seem like small acts, but they are acts of revolution. They are steps toward reclaiming your power. Because in the end, strength is not about domination. It's not about being feared. It's not about being flawless. Strength is about authenticity. It's about the unshakable power of a person who no longer needs to wear a mask. And that kind of strength is rare. That kind of strength is magnetic. That kind of strength is yours if you dare to claim it. Machiavelli did not teach us to be ruthless for the sake of cruelty. He taught us to be realists, to stop living in illusions, to see life as it is and act accordingly. And sometimes, the most radical realism of all is to admit that you are human. Because in that admission lies a power that no enemy, no critic, no culture of denial can ever take from you. So let me leave you with this final truth. Machiavelli never wanted you to be heartless. He wanted you to be effective. And the most effective life you can live is one where you stop hiding from yourself. Because once you stop hiding, you stop being controlled. Once you stop pretending, you stop being fragile. And once you embrace your vulnerability as truth, you discover the paradox that changes everything. Machiavelli did not teach you to be ruthless. He taught you to be real. And sometimes, reality itself, the fragile, trembling, vulnerable truth of who you are, is the greatest strength you will ever possess. If this message resonated with you, don't let it fade away. Take a moment right now to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell, because every week I'll bring you new content to challenge your beliefs, awaken your mind, and guide you deeper into the truths you've been avoiding. And I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below with the part of this video that spoke to you the most. Was it the challenge to stop hiding? The reminder that vulnerability is a strategy, not a weakness? Or the realization that your pain can be transformed into power? Your story matters. Share it, because someone out there needs to see your vulnerability to discover their own strength.